Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gavinsky's Tutorials. Today I'm taking a look at FM Zone by Toybox Audio, so same developers as Thump 1 and Buzz Zone. They also did a lot of reactor packs over the years. So this is like those other two plugins available for desktop and iPad. You'll find links and more info and stuff in the pinned comment of this video. So there's a lot going on in this, much more, I think, than even in BuzzZone. There are just so many different FM operator setups you can do. So if you're an expert, you can go super deep with this. But what I really like about it is that if you're not an expert, if you don't know the first thing about FM synthesis and you're not interested in knowing, you can also do a lot in this just by working with these sounds down in this menu here. So you can see here we've got all these menus built in where you have, for example, here a bunch of different pluck sounds. And so if we just take one of these, for example, and we click on this little pencil here, this opens up all the FM stuff that's going on in the background. So we can see here that this is just 4-op FM. But actually, if we look at this list here, you can see there's a lot of cool stuff that you would not find in most FM synths. You have these super saw things. So if we click on that, for example, we can see that there's a super saw operator in here. Now, all these knobs and stuff, we can click through these and we'll get all kinds of different options as well. So you can go super, super deep with this. And there's much more than just those super saws. You know, we have ones with additive operators, ring mod, sample and hold, double ring, that's just similar to ring mod, but involves another oscillator. You know, you have stuff like some physical modeling type stuff here, modeling strings and a bell model. And we can do FM modulation of the filter frequency. And we have these analog ones here that have analog oscillators in them that have various types of waveform, like pulse waveforms, for example, that you wouldn't get in the normal bog standard 4-op, just pure FM operator types. So this is one really cool thing. And the other thing, if you're familiar with their other stuff, is that here we have basically an area where we can draw envelopes for different things. So here, this is the envelope for shape, and there's nothing there. If we look here, though, here, this is basically a looping envelope. So it's looped over here. That is modulating the pitch of this. Now, let's just change that back a second. That's the original sound, right? So, yeah, now remember also that if we click on this little arrow here, we can call up basically like different preset types for envelopes that can save us a lot of time. You don't need to draw everything in by hand. For example, here we just change that envelope type out. And then, you know, you can just do your own tweaking by dragging. You can double tap to add breakpoints and so on. And so what's really cool is that all of these main knobs here, so we have these 6 main knobs for the synth section, and here 3 for the sample engine. So we can have different envelopes for each of those, and we control the global speed up here. But with each one, we can set it to loop here, and we can divide or multiply the speed for that. And we can do that differently for all of these envelopes. So, you know, here we can draw in a completely different envelope, and over here we can choose whether we loop it or not, and then we can set the multiples for that, or dividers. So it's genuinely very, very powerful. So let's just take a look through the UI, and as we go through the video, I'll demo different presets and stuff to illustrate different points. So also just want to mention this is a sponsored video. Thank you very much, Toybox. Toybox is a great supporter of creators in this space. I think they understand that, you know, really almost nobody is able to make money just from YouTube ad revenue. It's really important that more developers sponsor people in the space. It really is. So I appreciate that. And as always, it's in a sponsored video. It's, you know, the developer is paying for my time, never for my opinion. So I'll always make constructive criticism and stuff. There's no difference between sponsored videos and videos that I'm not paid for in that sense. So if we take a look at the UI, over here we have a little randomizer, okay? And if we look here, we have a choice between randomize and mutate preset. And so let's say I want to mutate instead. If I choose mutate from here, then every time I press this button, we'll get a mutation, which is just a less radical randomization than you would get from the randomize preset. Now, there are some keyboard shortcuts that you can use, which should actually work on the iPad as well if you have a keyboard connected. But for some reason, those are not working for me. So if you look at the manual, for example, you'd find there's a shortcut that you could use where when you randomize, it will also randomize the envelopes. But unfortunately, I'm not able to use that at the moment because it's not enabled on, at least not working on my iPad with the keyboard connected. So that's a pity. Now let's jump through to another thing here. So if we look here, for example, we have this spectrum. We can see the envelope for that here. So basically that is just starting from a certain base point. Let's just take this down for a second. Let's bring that up. So what spectrum is doing over here is, what the envelope is doing is increasing the spectrum knob's value. So it's just modulating this knob over time. And what the spectrum knob does basically is increase or reduce the FM depth. And we can click through here and see, so here, you know, we have the filter opening up a little bit more. Over time, you can hear that, right? Getting brighter. And then that cutoff closing slowly over time. And we can see that this is set to loop. And you can see here it's set on this divide by 5. So it's happening very slowly. So we could change that. We could make it a multiply one instead, for example. Okay, so that's the basic principle there. Now, the speed knob up here, this, if we click here, we get different options. So we have off, free, retrig, locked, pitch, and chaos. Now, these things will only apply when it's in loop mode. If loop mode is off, when we change speed, we'll just be changing a free value set in hertz. So that's what this is like. Let's just change that. I turned this off, sorry. So that is like super fast at the moment. And so now I'm just dragging that with my finger and you can hear, you know, we're getting nice unsynchronized slowing down of the speed. So that's really good for, you know, your more just freestyle, ambient and experimental stuff or whatever. And then instead, if you wanted to sync to the tempo and so on, you can loop it here and play around with these different modes. So let's talk for a second about what these are. So when it's set to off, not only is there no synchronization, but there is re-triggering, okay? So every time you put in a new MIDI note, this will go back to the start point. And then if we put it in free, we'll have free running envelopes. And so there's no re-triggering at all. Even when you play a MIDI note, it's just going to go on its own way. With retrig, now loop is synchronized to the host tempo, so in this case 120 BPM, and it will be re-triggered. Now here, if we have this set to 1, it will loop every bar, okay? And so if it's set to 3 at the moment, that means that it's going to loop around 3 times in the space of a bar, okay? Now locked, this will have the loop speed synced to the host tempo, and the playback position is locked to the host transport. So it'll, when it's like halfway through the bar, for example, it'll always be at exactly the same point in the loop. Then pitch, that's a really cool one. Let's just demo that a second. So this one itself is very kind of FM-y. So here, basically, the length of a cycle will match the time it takes for one cycle of the waveform that the synth is producing. So when you play lower notes, everything will be looping slower. And when you play higher notes, it'll loop much faster. And then chaos, this is a really cool one. So here the loop position is synchronized to a random or chaotic signal. So let's just leave it maybe at that divider for a second. So you see here, you know, it's running back and forth and whatever. Let's just tap this to get it back to no multiplier or divider. So it's a bit like a sample and hold with kind of lag between them, smoothing. So it's not just jumping from one value to another. Super cool. Then we have attack and release times here, okay? Here we have a global pitch offset, so you can pitch things up or down. Here we have stereo widening. Here we can choose different reverbs or effects, and then here this will increase the amount of the effect. So that's obviously very simple, just one knob for each one, but they do sound good. Now over here you can toggle on or off an on-screen keyboard right inside the plugin. Up here we have some settings, and this is very similar really to what you'd find in their other apps. Settings for MIDI, Learn, OSC, and so on and so on. You can open the manual from here. It also has this thing where you can turn on dynamic knobs, where when you drag more finely, you'll get a much finer control of the knobs, but it will also allow you to make large adjustments when you swipe faster. Over here, we have a lot of settings as well, and this is something that I don't really want to go into because these are all described with just one line in the manual. It's very easy to go there and check all this for yourself. I'll just mention a couple of little things. So the polyphony, the max polyphony in this is 5 notes at a time. Note that you can reduce the bit depth, or you can increase it right up to 64. And so here in this particular instance, we've got this kind of gritty sound. And that's the higher bit depth, and you can hear that's more hi-fi sound. You know, you can choose whether or not the sub-oscillator, which we'll look at in a minute, will go through the filter. You can toggle on high-quality filters. And here, again, this is something that I covered in my buzz zone video. You know, you can set what velocity will be able to modulate, and what pitch will modulate, what mod wheel will modulate, and so on, and control the depth. And you can invert the movement here as well if you want. So again, all this in the manual if you want to look it up. So let's look at the synth engine. So pitch, that will just control the pitch. And again, of course, we can do envelopes for that. Oops. And again, clicking on this little arrow here, we can call up all these different options. So as well as having different shapes, including different things that are appropriate for sequences, we can choose things like whether we'll randomize an envelope or mutate an envelope. So that'll just make a slighter adjustment, or we can flip it or reverse it. And we can enable snapping. So here you can see now it's going to automatically snap to this grid. So that's super useful as well. You also have some stuff here: manage envelopes, copy and paste, init, save, and import and export, and so on. Useful. Now, do bear in mind that it's only these main, so these are called the main knobs, these 9 across here, 6 for the synth, 3 for the sampler. These ones beneath are called tweak knobs, and these are pairs basically. So this is a pair, this is a pair, and that's why they've got these little lines between them. Now, what these do roughly, let's just talk about that for a second. So the shape knob, that will add harmonics basically. So let's just go to the init patch for a second. So you can hear there what shape's doing. Double tap to reset to default. Spectrum, that's just increasing the FM depth. Change the timbre. Of course, all these things will sound different depending on what algorithms are running in the background. Remember, we access those using this pencil. Then now the filter. So the filter, we have loads of different types that we can access down here by clicking on that triangle. So I won't go through what all of those are, just to mention that you have, seriously like a great variety of filters here. A lot of, classic famous stuff, including, for example, things like the filter from the 303, a vowel filter, crusher, so stuff that's not even really like a filter, frequency shifter, ring mod, wave folder, and chorus. These can sound really great. Level, okay, so that's just your level for that engine, how loud it is. Again, a really important one to set up envelopes for. And then down here, so what we have here is a sub-oscillator. And what that actually does will depend on what we set here. Now, this is not real. It's described as a sub-oscillator in the manual, but it is not just a sub-oscillator. This can do a lot of different things. So if we have it here, it is just going to be at the same pitch as the main oscillator. If we choose here, then we have a sub-oscillator pitched down an octave, and we can pitch it down 2 octaves, and we can make it just a totally different type of oscillator, a triangle, saw, or square. Or we can choose different things like AM, ring mod, FM, and so on. And here, this oscillator will instead modulate the main oscillator. So let's just listen to ring mod, for example. Vibrato, that will do. That's just an LFO doing vibrato on the main oscillator. It's producing white noise. Here, the noise is modulating the pitch. Pretty interesting. And this is just doing chaotic pitch modulation. Now over here, we have a detuning effect. Now here, this is a very quick way to scroll through the different algorithms that are running in the background. So for this part, let's open this up. So now we can see the operators here, and we can see here that basically this is operator 4, and these are all just FM operators in this particular case. Operator 4 is going into operator 3, that's going into 2, and then into 1, so it's just serial going in this direction from top to bottom. All right, now if we look here, we can see what that is, FM1. So we can scroll through those here, okay? Or we can just use this knob to scroll instead. And then here you'll see this says F5, so that means it's FM5. So we'll look very quickly at each of these. So I'm just going to use the arrow to scroll through them. So the first few are just different 4-operator FM setups where all of the operators are just FM operators. Now here you have, in this section, you can set the level and the feedback amount. And then here you're setting the ratio. And here we've got a sort of offset. And here we can control the timbre. Well, actually, sorry, no. So what this does, this is called the modes. So these modes will do a bunch of different stuff. Now, it would get too technical to go into all of this. And at the moment, none of this information is actually even in the manual, although that information is going to be added to the manual at some point. So in most of the operator setups, these modes will determine what the timbre and spectrum knobs in the main UI control in terms of the level, feedback, and pitch. So if we just take for one example, because again, I'm not going to go through all of these, it would be too technical. If we go to the 5th mode, that is timbre, okay? So in this mode, the timbre knob will actually control the operator level, okay? So the timbre mode here, that'll control the operator level. But if we go through to, let's say, the 9th mode, pitch, here the timbre node will actually, the timbre knob will control pitch. So basically, to be honest, the best thing to do here would just be to experiment with choosing different modes here, and then tweak the timbre and spectrum knobs and see what happens. And I'll just mention also that the modes that you have available here, I'll just cycle through them quickly so you can see what they are. Fixed feedback, spectrum, timbre, attack, slow, medium, and fast. These will just use special little attacks at different lengths. Pitch, on the level, envelopes on the level. Then we have other stuff here. So these will change. For example, if I pick, let's say, if I pick one of these analog modes, so let's pick that. And if we look here, now we have an analog oscillator operator in here. And so this is different. This has different options here in the modes. No, actually that one has different options for the waveforms. Yeah. So we look at the next knob, waveforms. So here in the analog operator type, let's see what waveforms we've got. We've got sine, triangle, sawtooth, square, and then we've got a whole bunch of pulse waveforms. But if we look at one of the FM operators, then we have different choices here, right? Look, sine, half sine, absolute sine, square, short sine, and so on. Now, really the best thing will be to just play around with these and see for yourself how they influence the sound. But as mentioned, the really cool thing is that you don't have to go in and play around with any of the stuff in the engines whatsoever. That is what this sounds section is for here. And so a really cool thing to do as well can be to just take a preset. Let's take, for example, I don't know, let's take one of the sequence presets. So let's take this gray ground one. And so here the sound is just set to default, and let's just try flicking through some different sounds. And so, you can see here, right, the model analog 2, you can see that there. And so this is one of the things that you can do to tweak patches. You can change the sounds, but what you can also do is just go in and change the operator setup. And so you can just find something that you like, and then maybe play around with these main knobs, okay? The spectrum knob, not doing much there. Or the timbre knob, that's not doing anything either. Ah, there we go. And then we can just, change the operator type altogether. So just even flicking through this knob will immediately give you a lot of variety. So we got all kinds of stuff there, thin, woodwind, and there are basically over 400 different sounds here, so I'm seriously not even going to bother going there. If we look at the presets as well, I mean, we've just got a huge number of presets. So just here, these are the bass presets: bell, brass, drum. I'm sure other people will be doing demos of these. I'm going more into the details, so I'll let you watch other videos if you want to get, really lots and lots of demos. You can save your own user presets as well. Now, a really nice thing is for the iOS app is that although the presets are sandboxed, what this does is actually duplicate the presets in the app into a file in the files section of your iPad. And every time you open the standalone app, that will be updated. So then you've got all your presets there. If you wanted to, for example, make a preset pack for other people, you'd have all that in there. So that's really cool. You have stuff here as well: init preset, randomize preset, mutate preset, save preset as, and then here manage presets with some different choices there. And then over here we've got the sample section. And so at the moment you can see there's no sample loaded. Now here you've got really all kinds of stuff. And you can load your own samples as well. And a really cool thing too is that even though this is a Juice port from desktop, and a lot of those kind of ports do not support drag and drop, this does support drag and drop. So if you just take the Files app and load the Files app in, slide over mode or whatever, then you can just pick a file and drag it in here into this space, and that sample will be in there. Now, there's a limit to how long it can play samples for. So if you put in a longer one, it'll still play it, but it might not play the whole thing. I'm not sure what the limit is, but that is really cool. I'm so glad that it has that. But if we look at the built-in samples there, we've got all this sort of stuff that, if you were making, say, a flute sound or whatever, and you wanted it to be a bit more airy, you can kind of bring in these samples from that. And you've got like just different nice sort of analog synth sounds or whatever, saws and things. A bunch of bass stuff, blown sounds, booms, drums, instruments, keyboards, kicks, metallic, noisy, stabs, super saws, synthetic. Okay, so even some FM stuff in there, vocal and woody. And you can randomize a sample. So let's randomize this, and let's bring this level envelope up. And let's bring down the level of the synth. And so here we're hearing that sample. And so remember that it can be really fun also to play around with the envelope there. And remember, you can use this to do things like flip it and reverse it and so on. So, you know, there we're bringing the volume down. So like super cool, super cool. Loads of options, loads of options. And again, this manage samples, load, clear, import, and delete. One thing though I mentioned to the developer is that when you drag in your own sample, there's no actual way to then just save that in the app. So I did experiment when I saved it in here and I closed the session, for example, and I reopened it again, the sample was still there. And I assumed that if I saved a preset with that, the sample would be there. But, you know, it didn't actually add the sample to the collection in there. So there could be maybe a bit of tweaking there, and the developer agreed that would be a good thing to add. So I think I've covered pretty much all the stuff about this. Let's just finish off by listening to a few presets and doing a little bit of tweaking. So let's just latch a few notes here. So there's a couple of little things that you really need to pay attention to when you're playing around with this. So let's look, for example, let's switch to pitch here, okay? So we're now going to adjust the pitch envelope, and I'm going to bring in just one of the ready-made ones, the stepped one, this 4-bit saw. Now you notice you didn't hear any difference there, right? And that is because I have not set this up to loop. So let's, because we got sustained notes here, right? So it's already missed the, it's already been through this one time. So let's loop it. And so this is set to ×1. So it's basically going through and it's just reducing the pitch in these steps. And it's going through the whole loop in 1 bar. And we could change that here, okay? We could, you know, for example, divide this by 4. And so now it's just doing that, it's doing one of these every bar, so it'll take 4 bars to do the entire loop. Now, another thing to pay attention to is just, you know, the level of the synth and sample engine. So here I feel like, you know, that sample is drowning that out a lot. So another thing to be wary of is if you start playing around with the spectrum knob, for example, or the timbre, if you have filter very heavily down like it is here, then you're not going to really hear very much. So let's bring that filter up. And so, I mean, that's just halfway, but that's already super bright like that. But it sounds great. Let's bring it down to half there. And so there we're getting more atonal, right? So I kind of like this one with the timbre down, actually. Now this one, remember, we're playing with the harmonics. And you can hear that there, right? You can hear that's really emphasizing those higher... Actually, no, that's doing the FM depth. This one, we're emphasizing the harmonics more. Let's just put the timbre back up here. And let's just leave that spectrum maybe up here a little bit. And so let's just experiment first by bringing in a sub. So let's bring in the level here. So that's just pitch down an octave. Now we got to pitch down 2 octaves. Or we could go in and do something else completely. Ring mod or whatever. So here the second oscillator is modulating the filter cutoff, remember? And there we got just an LFO doing vibrato. So, you know, you can see just mad room to experiment with this. And there's that D tune. And so just flicking quickly through the algorithms. See if you get something you like and play around with the timbre and the filter and the spectrum. Or just change the sounds inside. I mean, just a monster sound. I'm going to bring down that sub-oscillator. And then, you know, you could go through and experiment with the samples and so on. But I won't do that. This video would just get super long. So a really great sounding app, I think, and I think definitely this is the deepest one so far of the 3 Toybox plugins that have been released recently. As I said at the beginning, what I really like about it is that it's just perfect for total beginners. Even if you don't really know the first thing about synths, first of all, you can just you know, get along with these hundreds of presets that are built in, and then every preset you can just tweak it very easily by just changing the sounds in there. And then if you do know what you're doing, you've always got the choice to go in and tweak around with the operators and so on. You can do so much with the envelopes. Just remember that the envelopes are only for the main knobs. You cannot modulate these tweak knobs with the envelopes. And I sometimes wonder really why it's like that. I don't know. But anyway, you know, you could always use an external LFO or whatever to tweak those kind of things. So yeah, you know, that, and when you think that you can set loops with different dividers or multipliers, you know, for each thing, for each of the envelopes, you've just got like a huge amount of sound design possibilities. It's really crazy. And you've got all those, just so many different filter types and even stuff that's more than filters all built in there. I think for the money, you're getting really like a huge amount of bang for your buck. So this is $10 intro price on desktop. And then the regular price is just $13, which is also, I think, very reasonable, really. So the only thing I'd really criticize is that, as I said, at the moment, I'm not able to use the keyboard shortcuts, even with my keyboard connected on the iPad. And it means that I can't do things like randomize the envelopes as well as the other controls when I press the randomize button, because that needs a keyboard shortcut. So I'm sure that is just a bug and that will be fixed, because it should be able to do that. And Thump 1, for example, no, sorry, maybe Thump 1 was able to do that, but Buzzone was definitely able to do that. Because I when I did my demo on that, I was demoing the using it on the iPad and using the keyboard to do shortcuts. It just seems to me it'd be really much better, to be honest, if there were just 3 buttons up here: one for randomize, one for mutate, and another one for like randomize and randomize the envelopes, and another one for mutate and mutate the envelopes. Like that would, I mean, there's so much room here, you know? Why aren't there just more randomizer things? Another thing that I think could be done that would improve this app is if it had just a more robust randomization system. So it's nice that you can randomize and you can mutate, but you can't actually lock anything. So I really like the way the audio thing apps do that. You can go in and you can decide, for example, I want to lock it so that the spectrum and timbre are set at such and such a level, and it won't randomize those. It will only randomize other things. But this doesn't have that, so it's just you randomize everything, or you mutate everything. You can't be selective at all about what gets included in the randomization. But apart from that, I wouldn't really criticize much about this, and I'm so glad that it has the drag and drop feature even on iPad for samples, which, as I mentioned, sometimes developers who port from desktop don't really manage to implement that. So it's really good that it can do that. There are probably a few other niggles. There were a few other things I mentioned to the developer, but I guess they're not really important enough because I'm not able to remember them at the moment. But if anything else springs to mind, I'll mention it in the pinned comment to this video. So yeah, well, the other thing I'd say just is I do hope that the developer adds more information to the manual, because it does not go into quite enough detail really about some of the stuff regarding what the knobs in here do. And I hope it was useful for you that I went through at least some of that stuff in this video. If it was useful for you, smash the like and, write a comment maybe for the algorithm if you'd be so kind. And if you, like iOS music production and even desktop, because I mean, nowadays so many desktop apps are also available for iPad and iPhone a lot of the time as well, then consider subscribing to my channel and hit the notification bell if you want notifications and so on. And thanks once again to Toybox for sponsoring this video. It's just so important that developers sponsor YouTubers in this space because it's a very small niche. It takes a lot of work to make videos week after week on complex apps, and it's just really not properly paid work at all because, YouTube ad revenue is next to nothing. So it's incredibly important that developers do sponsor YouTubers. So big thanks to Toybox for doing that, and they've done that with all of their recent releases, and I really appreciate it, and I'm sure other creators that they've sponsored appreciate it as well. And I think that the community should consider, showing support to those developers as well, because YouTubers are so important in this ecosystem. So it's great to see more devs doing that. All right, thank you, and see you in the next video, everyone. Take care.